All right. Okay, say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Mommy.
Hi.
I like to watch this show.
All right. Have you ever found yourself frustrated with so-so healthcare or feeling like you're spending more and more on health insurance premiums, co-pays, and out-of-pocket costs?
Yes.
Well, you're not alone. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American's expenditure on healthcare was nearly double that of Canadians, according to the Statistics Canada website. Americans actually ranked, well, the U.S. actually ranked number one on overall healthcare spending of over 40 countries that were surveyed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Now, healthcare spending and cost is not the only reason that I believe being a Canadian resident is better than being a U.S. resident. My other reasons include the numerous benefits to families or people wishing to start a family, as well as the low university costs for people wishing to further their education. Now let's start by tackling the issue of healthcare and the advantages that Canada has over the US in this area. The first big difference in healthcare between Canada and the US is the price of health insurance premiums. Now, according to the National Conference of Legislatures, the average American spent nearly $17,000 on annual insurance premiums. Now, in contrast, Canadians actually fund most of their healthcare through taxes, much like the Medicare system here in the US. Premiums in the US are actually compounded by other out-of-pocket costs such as co-pays, deductibles, and pharmaceuticals. Now, as many of you may know, the lower your premiums, the more likely it is for your out-of-pocket costs to actually be higher. Some of you may wonder how much more Canadians spend in taxes since most of their healthcare is funded this way. Now, according to the National Post, Canadians spend about 10% more in taxes than the United States. And this may sound like a big amount, but when you consider the fact that that's about $10,000 of a $100,000 annual income, that's still far less than the average amount that most Americans spend on premiums a year. In addition to that, Canada's median wealth per person is actually $25,000 or nearly $25,000 more per person than the United States. And that's according to the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Report 2015. Also, according to the report, they mentioned that this is mostly due in part to the fact that Canada's wealth is actually more evenly distributed among the middle class and have far less of their citizens with very low incomes, as you can see here. Obviously, the United States has much more with incomes below $10,000 a year. Well, now that we've talked about healthcare and some of the advantages that Canada has over the US, let's talk about the benefits for those with families or wishing to start a family. So some of you may or may not know that maternity leave is actually, and can be actually hard to come by here in the US. Now, there's no real government guidelines for this, so most companies actually create their own policies and procedures for it. While some companies or most companies in the US will actually offer a couple of months of leave to expecting or new parents, usually that leave is unpaid. Now, the employee may have that covered if they have sick time or vacation time to cover it, which most people don't. But in Canada, there is a big difference. Now, according to my sister and brother-in-law, Canadian residents who have experienced this firsthand, there's actually two types of leave in Canada. The first is called pregnancy leave, and that's for the mother, and it's 3 months in total. It can actually be used during the pregnancy or after the baby is born. There's also paternity leave, and that one is a total of 9 months to be used among the parents together. That one can be used up until the child's first birthday, and it's, as I mentioned, divided up between the parents, so one parent could say take all 9 months, or one parent can take a portion of that, and then the other parent can use the rest. Now, this paternity leave is also available for adoptive parents for the first year of the adoptive child's care. And the leave is also paid with a percentage of the employee's normal pay in line with their unemployment benefits. Now, employers can choose to subsidize this benefit, and they can choose for how long they would like to do so. For example, my brother-in-law's employer decided to subsidize his pay for the first 3 months of leave to bring it closer to his normal pay rate. The other thing with employers in Canada is that they do have to guarantee your position upon returning to work at either an equal or higher level that you left. And then the other thing is too, Canada is actually in talks currently about potentially increasing that parental leave from 9 months to 12 months. The other major benefit for Canadians is called the child tax benefit. Now, this is a monthly benefit deposited directly into the parent's account. And you can see here there's a bit of a comparison between what we have here and what they have there. Now, the monthly payments, as I mentioned, they're deposited directly into their account. They're tax-free. And according to the child benefit calculator on the Canada Benefits website, the estimated tax-free monthly payment for a family with an annual income of $50,000 a year with 2 children under 6 years old would be approximately $841. Now, the U.S. does have something that you could consider similar, but there are some big differences, and that's the U.S.'s version is the child tax credit. Now, this is a credit that individuals, parents are given on their tax forms when they file taxes for the year. Now, parents like myself and my husband usually end up getting that full amount back in your tax return. However, the amount is $1,000 per child. So if you were to compare that to Canada's child tax benefit for 2 children, that $2,000 is nearly 1/5 the amount received by the Canadian counterpart. So big difference there. Well, now that we've talked about some of those big benefits for parents or expecting or people who would like to become parents in the future, let's take a look at something that many of you, especially myself right now, are all too well aware of when trying to further your education, and that's the cost of college. So going to college is becoming more and more necessary in the workforce today to get a leg up on our competition, but it can be incredibly expensive. Now, in Canada, you can actually go to a top-rated university for prices very similar to what community colleges cost here in the US. Let's go ahead and take a look at this by comparing 2 top-rated universities, one here in the US and one in Canada. Now, you'll probably recognize the name Yale University. It's a very highly regarded university here in the US. And according to the US News and World Report's Best Global University Rankings, Yale actually comes in at number 14, as you can see here, with a global score of 81.2, and they're tied with the University of Pennsylvania. Now, just behind Yale, with a global score of only 1/10 of a point lower, is the University of Toronto. Now, would you believe me if I told you that University of Toronto attending there is about 8 times less than going to Yale University? Because it is. According to Yale University's financial aid website, the tuition and fees for undergraduate students per academic year is nearly $50,000. In comparison, in stark comparison, the Toronto University's website mentions that the estimated cost for tuition and fees per academic year for an undergraduate student is only about $6,000. Now, that is a drastic difference in price, and that huge difference in price can make a difference in how long it takes you to pay off your tuition, especially when you're using things like financial aid. So now that we've talked about the major difference in costs of post-secondary education in Canada and the US, let's go ahead and review what we've talked about here today. So Canada may not have been a country that you would have thought had advantages over the US. Maybe when people would mention Canada before, all you would think of was maple syrup and hockey. But what you probably didn't realize is that healthcare costs are much lower in Canada. They take care of their families or people wishing to have a family in the future. And you can go to a top-rated university in Canada for prices very close to the community college prices here in the US. So the next time you have to dole out that $4,300 in healthcare expenses, just keep in mind that you could be paying nearly half that as a resident in Canada.
Oh, thank you, thank you. All right, audience. Hello again.